I'm Howard Green. So, you go into the grocery store, and sometimes you buy the organic grapefruit, and sometimes you don't. Or how about those environmentally friendly coffee filters? Sometimes you buy them, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's price, sometimes it's something else, sometimes it's for no reason at all. And it is mystifying retailers. The truth is they don't have a clue who the green consumer is and what motivates him or her, probably her. As a result, there's lots of green products sitting on shelves gathering dust, and retailers don't know how to market it. So today we're going to talk about this and the challenges facing retailers in a world that talks more and more about green, but has yet to walk the talk. Joining us are Paulette Padanyi, Associate Professor at the College of Management and Economics at the University of Guelph, and Steven Sage, Vice President Sustainability and Innovation at Kruger Products. Among other things, Kruger makes Scotty tissues and cashmere toilet paper. Good to have the two of you guys with me today. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
So, all along, I thought that retailers had consumers all figured out. That, you know, consumer behavior was a precise science, and that I'm getting a face there. Obviously not. Fill in the blanks.
Oh, well, I mean, we know some things for sure, and we do understand something like, for example, the consumer behavior, purchase decision behavior, and the process involved. But it is complicated, and it certainly is complex in terms of the green products. There's a lot of confusion out there about them. It's really that simple. Consumers know they need to buy green. They know that for sure, and we know that for sure. There's a lot of information out there. People are looking for it, but they go into the store and they're confused.
Are they?
I do think they are. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think that manufacturers like ourselves probably originally thought there was a specific kind of person who is the green consumer. And what we found in our research and also working with Dr. Padanyi is it's a lot more complicated than that. They're not necessarily the Birkenstock wearing stereotype that we all have, right? And actually,
the health food store of the 1970s.
Yeah, that's an outdated myth. And really what you find is that the challenges for marketers and retailers is that it's not really demographically driven. So
that's right.
It's across all segments, right?
Absolutely. It's more related to psychographics, to orientation toward green. It's important to you. But when we look at the demographic and attempt to create demographic profiles, we just can't do it. There aren't significant differences demographically by age, by gender, by where you live. None of that seems to count. It's just what's inside you, what grabs you.
So it's sort of an impulsive purchase then when you buy something that is green, or what? You're shaking your head.
No, we know that people who are oriented toward green are actually do investigate. The people who are very green oriented, by God, they check out all kinds of sources of information. They go to the internet, they use social media, they use reference groups, all of that kind of thing. So they are educated about it. When they go in, they know what they want.
The challenge is that group of people is a very, very small segment of the population.
Right, exactly.
So to a mass, retailer, or certainly to a large manufacturer who's selling to everyone, it's a lot more complicated, right? So it's not necessarily just that 2% that any of us are necessarily going after. We're looking for something much broader. And it's interesting, I think one of the challenges is, particularly in Canada, right, we see ourselves as very, environmentally thoughtful, and when you ask... Smug, perhaps. When you ask consumers, do you want an environmental product? 90% of them will say literally yes.
Yeah.
But when they actually go to purchase it, there's a gigantic gap.
So we're all liars when it comes to it?
No, like I said, I think there's confusion. What a lot of people will do is they will pick up products they think are sustainable, and we've done tests, I've done tests where you ask them what's in their shopping cart and they say, that's sustainable, and you go, no, I'm sorry, you guessed wrong on that one. You ask them, are there any competitors? Did you have any alternatives to what you were looking at in terms of what was sustainable? No, there aren't any sustainable options in this particular product category. So they get confused once they're sort of, I think, confronted with the variety that's available.
Actually, I want to follow up with you, Paulette, about that, because definitions are important, obviously. I guess that's what you're getting at here. And food is one thing, consumer products are another thing. But in the the realm of food, the word local seems to come up. What's wrong with the word local? Do people misinterpret it?
Yes, hugely, in fact. People don't know what local is, and unfortunately, nor do buyers in terms of institutional buyers or anything like that. There's really no clear definition of it. We think of local, it's been defined somewhat as sort of within 100 miles. That's actually not very feasible. So what do you use as local? Well, in Ontario, according to OMAFRA, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Food, it's really anything from Ontario. But does that really make sense when we can get stuff?
Thunder Bay is not exactly local.
No. And, you know, Buffalo might be more.
And some people, I think, look at it even country-specific, right? Would say, you know, Canadian is local. So there's a vast, you know, discussion around that.
But, you know, I want to come back to what you said, Stephen, and I was being a little cheeky when I asked if we're liars. But what about that huge disconnect between people's intentions and, okay, we'll take them at their word on that their intentions are good, that they think they would like to buy green products, and maybe they will, but then they don't. What happens between that that brainwave that is the intention and when they actually get to the grocery store?
Absolutely. So we've been fascinated by that question as well, and we recently held a thought leadership group that brought some of key players of the industry together, included some large retailers like Loblaw and Walmart, as well as manufacturers like myself from Kruger and then and Unilever, and we discussed this issue, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that falloff, and trying to find solutions is the bigger task.
We'll get to that later.
Yes,
but the falloff.
But I think the falloff, I think there's definitely confusion. There's so many different third-party certification systems out there. People are confused about what they mean. They don't understand what they mean. They don't know if they're legitimate. So that's one whole factor.
So they don't legitimacy. They don't trust what they see on labels?
I think they don't understand, and so that causes some of that confusion. I think that oftentimes it's hard to find these products in the store. I think they don't necessarily know what products categories, to your point, have green components to them and those categories that don't. So it's just, there's a lot of issues facing, it's challenging, right?
But what about price? Very simply price, because that obviously for many people is the number one factor in any purchase. So you go into a grocery store, I'll talk about myself. I look at organic blueberries. I love blueberries. Okay, some weeks, as I said in the intro, or grapefruit, whatever, I'll buy it. Some weeks I don't. I mean, some weeks the price is so hugely different, I will deprive myself of those things. Other weeks I'll treat myself to them. But so are a lot of people like that?
Yes, and there's a complexity to buying, and there's no doubt you take a lot of factors into account when you go to make a purchase. And environmental concern is one factor of many. But again, studies have shown that the price, availability, performance, there's a few other factors that come into play. And yeah, you'll take a look at it all when you go to the shelf, and you'll make a decision on the spot according to which factor is most prominent at the time. How
much is price a consideration when you put something on a shelf at Loblaw or Sobeys?
Yeah, very, very important.
Yes.
It's particularly in my category, which is household paper products. It's a category that's on deal every week. People are used to buying it that way. It's always on an end dial, so it's a very price-sensitive category, and consumers aren't willing to pay more for that. Now, in our case, we actually charge the retailer the same amount for both the green product and for the base products. So in our category, that sort of is negated, but there are other categories, like you mentioned, in terms of produce and things. And, you know, it's interesting that consumers often say they might pay more, but that's another one of those. But in real life, you know, that's rarely.
Yeah, that's right.
And particularly in these economics.
Even consumers who are that fall into that very green segment prefer the price to be the same. The vast majority of any
we want it all.
We want it all. That's right.
And so, I mean, so many products available in the grocery store are fantastic now. I mean, you can get anything from all over the world all year long.
Right. And I think that's, you know, we're also creatures of habit, right? So I've always bought this product, so to get somebody to investigate, particularly in low-interest categories, that's a challenge.
And so, what about in times of economic stress, like we've been through the past few years? Does that change people's buying behavior for these kinds of things as well?
I would say that it certainly makes price even more important. if you will, in terms of a factor, in terms of purchase. So, yeah, it does change things.
I think also that there's definitely a perception, you know, over time things have changed, right? So there are definitely products back in the 70s and 80s that were very inferior quality, and consumers might have experienced that product then, and then, you know,
I'll buy that over my dead body.
Yeah, exactly, right?
But now, yeah.
And I think there was a time definitely when prices for green products cost more, and I think a lot of that's been negated over time, right, with technology and et cetera. So.
But there's still the perception. The perception lingers.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk more about the green consumer and who he or she is after this.
I like the green organic products because it's, you know, usually less chemicals. I'm not as worried about ingesting weird chemicals, and also because with organic it's supporting good environmental policies. So yeah, that's why I do it.
I haven't done the personal research, but from what I understand on the surface, there's chemicals, especially on fruit, on the outside of fruit. And if you don't wash properly, that could be a problem. So organic's just a safer bet, and I don't mind the little extra cost.
I like when I look at the ingredients of something that I recognize that it's actual food, for example. Like sometimes when you buy food products, you look at the ingredients and you think, I don't even know what this is, but it's all chemical sounding and so on, so it can't be good for you.
I'm kind of on the fence about it because I know in some ways, for some manufacturers and producers, it really is just a money grab. We're going to slap this label on our product that really isn't green, but you know, there is no strict licensing standards or anything applied. So, you know, I don't know if it's real. A lot of times, obviously, it's nice to feel that you're supporting the environment when you buy something, and that's a good feeling. So I do lean towards that, but I do recognize the fact that it's also, you know, a lot of times not based in reality.
Okay, a few folks on the street talking about this issue today. We're talking about the green consumer and who is this beast, and do we really know? We've got Steven Sage of Kruger Products with us, and Paulette Padanyi of the University of Guelph. So we talked about, you know, what we don't know, and I guess it's hard to come up with a solution as a business if you don't really know who these people are. I guess my central question here, Steven, is, I mean, how do you monetize, ultimately, good intentions?
Fair. So I think really the premise is, look, in a perfect world, in an ideal world, if we could make all products that were sustainable to our Earth, that would be a good thing. Consumers would want those. So I think that's the premise from which we start. And we have the ability to make those products, right? So I think that, you know, there is definitely a business opportunity, right? And the question is, how can we grow that for good as well, right? Good for us, profit. Good for the world. Good for the consumer.
And so how are you pursuing that?
Well, for us, we have a history, really. Recycling paper is in our category. I think what consumers recognize as one of the most, you know, key components of an environmental product. And we've been a recycler in Canada since the 1970s, so it's a core competency. And about 30% of the fiber we use is recycled fiber. So we manufacture products specifically for that consumer segment. So we have a line called EnviroCare that are tissue paper products made from 100% recycled product. So they're third-party certified, and really, again, I think there are definitely retailer partners and consumer groups that are looking for those products. We just need to work together to figure out how to make it easier for people to find those products.
One last question on this before I go back to Paulette. I mean, do you have to give people a little extra push in the store, though, to get that product to jump out at them somehow, or something to excite them when they get to the cash and it's there, or whatever?
Absolutely. I think that, and we do a lot of work in terms of promotion. Earth Day is like our Christmas, you know. And at that point, there's a lot of focus from both the retailers and consumers and media, etc. But I think that's where the opportunity is, really for us to work together with our retail partners to figure out how to make these products more obvious for consumers to even make that choice, right? So there's a big opportunity in store for that.
You know, Paulette, it's interesting. I was saying in the commercial break that when you mention this issue to people just casually, everybody's got an opinion on it. And one member of our team is pregnant, and so the whole notion of pregnant women came up, and everybody who's having a baby wants the best for their baby. And so new mothers, it sounds like, are quite motivated to go out and buy the absolute cleanest, best, neatest, most organic. I mean, does that kind of thing make sense to you? What are the kind of motivations that can turn people?
In terms of that, yeah, I think it is. Certain life circumstance can make a difference. That's certainly a key example, I would say, in terms of that. But again, my research has tended to show what can make a difference is simply having the time to do to self-educate. Although we've said that it isn't very demographically dependent, in fact, and that's true. One thing, if we could turn to one group of consumers who seem to really be onto the green thing, it's, believe it or not, older women. And older women, because generally they're empty nesters, they're great shoppers, they have the time to look and educate themselves. Consumer education is hugely important in this thing. And being able to understand in each category what's important. Because what's important from a sustainability standpoint varies product category to product category. As Steven said, in terms of paper products, it's using recyclability, that kind of thing. But in terms of refrigerators and appliances, it's energy efficiency. It varies category to category. It takes a huge amount of consumer education.
So the follow-up question I have about that, about older women being terrific researchers on this issue and self-educating on it. I mean, how influential a consumer group can they ultimately be? Can they be thought leaders?
Good question. I suppose within their own reference groups, yes, but probably not very much to, and maybe to their children, but not necessarily in a broad-scale sense, perhaps.
So, I mean, if you're a retailer, I mean, how do you advertise on this? How do you conduct a marketing campaign based on really a vacuum?
Yes. Well, again, I think marketers and manufacturers and retailers can partner together on this. I mentioned April. It's just a natural time that, because of Earth Day, that there's an orientation toward that, and you do see that happen at that time. But I think that the real opportunity is maybe more on a year-round basis. I think that at shelf, we know in our research that at the point of shelf, that's really where consumers are obviously making their decision, and that's honestly where a lot of times they educate themselves. So while we scoff at the product label, there's definitely an opportunity to be clearer about the message on there. I think as an industry, there's definitely opportunity for us to try and figure out some way to standardize some of this. Again, consolidate some of all these third-party certifications, and there is work being done on that on a global basis. So,
like the Energy Star for appliances,
exactly.
That kind, or Heart and Stroke, those kinds of things.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Those are like shortcuts,
signals,
right?
Just absolute easy
and
signals for the consumer.
It's got the AOK, the good housekeeping seal of approval. Yeah.
So that's what's good. Some of the third-party certifications, it's a good idea, but they themselves aren't well marketed, and that becomes the problem, is they aren't known. So a third-party certification that's known is a good thing. One that's not.
And the challenge there is just that they're non-government, non-profit. So
yes.
And when you said, I just want to go back to something you said, Steven, at the shelf, that's where the decisions are made. So it's really when you walk up to the shelf, that's really the first time you give it any serious thought at all, and it's pretty much an instantaneous decision. Do you know that?
I think it depends by category. I think that Dr. Padanyi talked about some consumers are much more educated up front in the buying cycle.
Right, like the group you talked about, for instance. Yeah.
But and again, if you look across the three segments, we talk in terms of three segments. The people who are really conscious about green, that's somewhat green oriented, and the never always kind of the never ones, and the ones they all investigate. they all do reference outside to a certain extent. It's just the extent varies and declines considerably with as you move into the never group.
Just about a minute left, and there's one other concept I want to bring up, and that's the concept of the march of time. Because I was present, as you know, obviously at your conference several months ago, and one thing I remember we talked about was the car safety example, and how really it took decades before a Ralph Nader came along, and then it has taken really decades since Ralph Nader for things like airbags and all of these other kinds of features to come in. Is it really just a question of the march of time?
For me, my answer would be that yes, I do think time is a key factor in this. And again, we can, I think, as participants, we can activate that timeline. But I think that businesses there, consumers just have to catch up. I mean, I think that's a lot of it.
Get out and catch up, people. That's it for this issue today. But many thanks to both of you for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Howard.
That's Steven Sage of Kruger Products and Paulette Padanyi of the University of Guelph. Coming up next, the Headline Mailbag. We'll be right back.